The year 2387 was like any other year for Dr. Emma Clark. She worked on a big space station called Harmony Point, floating between the stars. Emma studied how different alien races talk to each other. It was her job to understand the minds of creatures from across the galaxy. Emma had been doing this work for 5 years now. Every day, she watched how the crystal people made musical sounds to share their thoughts. The gas creatures used special smells that carried messages through the air. The robot races sent information through beams of light that moved faster than anyone could see. The galaxy was full of life. 847 different types of smart creatures lived among the stars. They all had their own ways of thinking, their own ways of talking, and their own ways of living. Emma found it amazing how they all worked together in the big group called the Galactic Confederation. Humans had joined this space family only 200 years ago. They were still new compared to races that had been traveling between stars for thousands of years. But humans had learned fast and made friends with many alien species. Emma spent most of her time in the research lab. The walls were covered with screens showing brain patterns and thought waves from different creatures. She had tested the minds of 6-armed blue aliens, floating jellyfish-like beings, and even living rocks that could think and talk. One thing always puzzled Emma. When she read the old history books of every alien race, she found the same strange story. Every single species had ancient tales about something they called the sacred voices. These were supposed to be wise spirits that talked to their ancestors long ago, giving them important advice during hard times. But here was the weird part: no one heard these voices anymore. Every modern alien Emma asked just laughed when she brought up the old stories. They said those tales were just silly myths from when their people were too primitive to understand science. The voices were just made-up stories, they claimed. Emma could not stop thinking about this mystery. How could every different alien race, scattered across the entire galaxy, all have the exact same type of myth? It seemed too strange to be just chance. One quiet Tuesday morning, Emma was running a normal test on human brain waves. She had asked a volunteer named Tom to sit still and clear his mind while machines watched how his brain worked. This was routine work that Emma had done hundreds of times before. But something different happened that day. Emma was watching the brain wave patterns on her screen when Tom suddenly sat up straight. His eyes were closed, but his face looked surprised and confused. "Do you hear that?" Tom whispered. Emma looked around the quiet lab. "Hear what?" "I don't hear anything." "There are voices," Tom said softly. "They're speaking to me, but not with words I know. Yet somehow I understand what they mean." Emma checked all her equipment. Everything was working normally. There were no radio signals, no outside sounds, nothing that could explain what Tom was experiencing. She thought maybe the brain scanning machine was causing some kind of hallucination. "Let me turn off all the equipment," Emma said. She switched off every machine in the lab until the room was completely silent. Tom kept his eyes closed and stayed very still. After a few minutes, his face changed. He looked peaceful and amazed at the same time. "They're still there," he said quietly. "The voices are still talking to me. They sound very old and very wise. They're telling me about things that are going to happen. About danger coming to the galaxy." Emma felt her heart beating faster. This was not normal. This was not anything she had seen in all her years of studying alien minds. "What kind of danger?" she asked. Tom listened carefully to something only he could hear. "Something called the Great Silence is coming. All the connections between the stars will break. Worlds will be alone and cut off from each other. Many will die unless someone helps them." Emma sat down hard in her chair. Tom was just a normal person, a maintenance worker on the space station. He had no training in science or alien studies. How could he know about cosmic events that even the smartest aliens had never mentioned? Over the next few days, Emma secretly tested other humans on the space station. She asked them to sit quietly and clear their minds just like Tom had done. The results shocked her. Out of 23 humans she tested, 5 more could hear the mysterious voices. Each person described the same experience: ancient, wise voices speaking in an unknown language that their minds could somehow understand. The voices always talked about the same things: coming danger, the need to prepare, and the importance of helping others when the crisis arrived. Emma tried the same test with alien volunteers. She asked crystal people, gas creatures, robot races, and many others to clear their minds and listen for voices. None of them heard anything at all. The voices seemed to speak only to humans. Emma began to realize something incredible and frightening. If these voices were real, and if they were telling the truth about coming danger, then humans might be the only ones in the galaxy who knew what was going to happen. She made her first official report that night, her hands shaking as she typed, "I believe I have discovered something that could change our understanding of human consciousness and our role in the galaxy. We may not be alone in ways we never imagined." As Emma finished writing, she wondered if anyone would believe her. The voices seemed impossible, but they felt more real than anything she had ever experienced in her scientific career. Emma could not sleep for 3 days after Tom first heard the voices. She kept thinking about what it meant. Every time she closed her eyes, she wondered if she was going crazy or if something amazing was really happening. She decided to test more humans on the space station. Emma made up excuses to get people alone in her lab. She told them she was doing routine health checks or studying how human brains worked in space. She never mentioned the voices at first. The results were incredible and scary at the same time. Out of 43 humans living on Harmony Point, 11 of them could hear the mysterious voices when Emma guided them into deep, quiet thinking. Each person described exactly the same experience. "They sound like very old grandparents," said Lisa, a cook from the food center. "They speak with such kindness but also with worry. They keep saying we need to get ready for something terrible." "The voices know things about space that I never learned," said Robert, an engineer who fixed the station's machines. "They tell me about stars dying and energy waves that will cut all the communication lines between worlds." Emma felt excited and terrified. The voices always said the same things to everyone. They warned about something called the Great Silence that would break all connections between planets and star systems. Without these connections, the galaxy would fall apart like a puzzle with all its pieces scattered. Emma knew she had to test aliens too. Maybe the voices spoke to everyone and humans were just better at hearing them. She started with the friendly 6-armed researchers who worked in the science department. She put them through the same quiet thinking exercises that worked with humans. The aliens sat still, cleared their minds, and listened carefully. Nothing happened. They heard only silence. Emma tried with the floating jellyfish creatures who were known for being very sensitive to mental energy. Still nothing. She tested the crystal people who could hear sounds humans could never detect. They heard no voices at all. Over 2 weeks, Emma secretly tested 67 different aliens from 23 different species. Not one of them heard even a whisper of the sacred voices. The voices spoke only to humans. This discovery frightened Emma more than anything else. Why would cosmic voices choose to speak only to humans? What made her species special when there were so many older and smarter races in the galaxy? The voices began telling the humans more detailed information. They spoke about dark energy waves that moved between stars like invisible storms. These waves would make space travel impossible and destroy the communication networks that held the Galactic Confederation together. "The wave is coming faster than we first thought," the voices told Emma during one of her listening sessions. "You have months, not years. Your people must prepare to help the galaxy survive the coming darkness." Emma knew she could not keep this secret much longer. The information was too important. If the voices were right, every world in the galaxy was in danger. She had to tell the Science Council, even though she knew they would probably not believe her. The big meeting happened on a Thursday morning. Emma stood in front of 12 of the smartest creatures in the galaxy. The council room was huge, with representatives from many different alien species sitting in chairs designed for their different body shapes. High researcher Catherine Vale led the council. She was a tall, thin woman with gray hair and sharp eyes that seemed to see through any lie. Catherine was famous throughout the galaxy for never believing anything unless she could prove it with science. Emma explained everything as carefully as she could. She showed brainwave recordings from the humans who heard voices. She played audio recordings, though the council members could not hear the voices on the recordings. She shared all the warnings about the Great Silence and the coming dark energy wave. The council room was quiet for a long time after Emma finished speaking. Then Catherine stood up slowly. "Dr. Clark," Catherine said in a cold voice, "we are scientists. We deal with facts that can be measured and tested. We do not waste time on human imagination and fantasy stories about cosmic whispers." "But the brain recordings show real activity," Emma said. "Something is definitely happening in these people's minds." "Yes," Catherine replied. "Something is happening. Humans are creating shared hallucinations, probably caused by stress from living so far from Earth. This is a medical problem, not a cosmic mystery." The other council members nodded in agreement. A robot representative spoke in its mechanical voice. "Humans are known for creating stories about invisible spirits and magic voices. This appears to be more of the same primitive thinking." Emma felt her heart sinking. She tried to explain again, but the council would not listen. They voted to end her research immediately and transfer her to a remote monitoring station at the edge of the galaxy. "You will study deep space radio signals," Catherine told her. "Maybe some quiet time away from other humans will help you focus on real science instead of imaginary voices." As Emma packed her belongings to leave Harmony Point, the sacred voices spoke to her more clearly than ever before. "Do not lose hope," they whispered in her mind. "The Council's disbelief does not change the truth. Find the humans who will listen. Gather those who can hear us. The galaxy's survival depends on human preparation for what is coming." Emma looked out at the stars as her transport ship carried her away from everything she knew. She was no longer just a researcher studying alien minds. She had become something she never expected, the first human prophet in an age when the galaxy desperately needed someone to hear the warnings from beyond. Emma's new home was a tiny metal station floating at the very edge of the galaxy. There were no other people there, just her and the endless darkness of deep space. The station was supposed to listen for radio signals from distant stars, but Emma spent most of her time listening to something much more important. Away from all the noise and busy life of Harmony Point, the sacred voices became much clearer. They spoke to Emma for hours every day, teaching her things that no human had ever known before. The voices told her their story. Long ago, millions of years before humans even existed, there was a race of beings called the Ancients. They were the first smart creatures in the galaxy, and they became so wise and powerful that they moved beyond the physical world into something higher. Before they left, the Ancients knew that other races would grow up among the stars. They also knew that terrible challenges would come that could destroy all life in the galaxy. So they left behind these voice echoes, like cosmic messages in bottles, to help guide future civilizations through the worst dangers. "We tried to speak to all races," the voices explained to Emma. "But as species became more dependent on machines and technology, they lost the ability to hear us. They evolved away from the spiritual connections that let them receive our guidance." "Why can humans still hear you?" Emma asked during one of her meditation sessions. "Humans are young," the voices replied. "Your species has not yet lost the cosmic receptor in your minds. You still value intuition, creativity, and spiritual seeking over pure logic. This makes you the bridge between the physical and spiritual worlds." The voices began teaching Emma specific things about the coming disaster. The Great Silence would be caused by a wave of dark energy that moved between star systems like an invisible storm. This energy would twist space and time, making it impossible for ships to travel faster than light. It would also destroy all the communication networks that connected worlds across the galaxy. Emma learned that the wave was moving faster than anyone expected. Instead of having years to prepare, they had only a few months. When the Great Silence arrived, every world would be cut off and alone. Trade would stop, food shipments would end, and many planets would face starvation and death. Emma knew she had to warn other humans, even though the Science Council had rejected her. She used the station's quantum communication system to send secret messages to humans across the galaxy. Most people ignored her messages or thought she was crazy, but a few listened. The first person to believe her was Captain James Mitchell. He commanded a big cargo ship called the Star Wanderer that carried supplies between different worlds. James was a practical man who had spent 20 years flying through dangerous space, and he trusted his instincts. "I've heard stories from old pilots about strange feelings they got in deep space," James told Emma during their first secret conversation. "Maybe there really are things out there that science doesn't understand yet." Dr. Rebecca Foster was the second person to join Emma's group. Rebecca worked on Mars, helping to build farms and cities on humanity's second home world. She was a smart scientist, but she also believed that humans had spiritual abilities that other species lacked. "I've always felt like humans were meant for something special in this galaxy," Rebecca told Emma. "Maybe this is it." The third person was Commander David Turner, who led human defense ships that protected the outer colonies. David was a military man trained to prepare for any kind of threat. When Emma explained about the coming disaster, David immediately started thinking about how to protect people. Together, the four humans created a secret network. They found other humans who could hear the sacred voices and began making plans based on the information the voices provided. The voices gave them very specific instructions. They had to store food, water, and medical supplies on key worlds throughout the galaxy. They needed to build communication systems that would work even when regular space networks failed. Most importantly, they had to prepare ships that could travel between isolated worlds using slower-than-light speeds. "When the Great Silence comes," the voices warned Emma, "only humans will be able to hear our guidance. You must become the lifeline that holds galactic civilization together during the dark time." Emma coordinated everything from her lonely station. James used his cargo ship connections to move supplies to hidden storage sites. Rebecca organized human colonies to become self-sufficient and prepare for isolation. David positioned defense ships at strategic locations where they could respond to emergencies. As the weeks passed, the voices became more urgent. They provided detailed star maps showing safe travel routes that would still work when space became twisted. They gave warnings about which worlds would face the worst problems. They even taught Emma how to recognize other humans who had the strongest ability to hear the voices. Emma often stood at the observation window of her station, looking out at the peaceful stars. Normal galactic life continued all around her. Alien ships traveled their regular routes, trade flowed between worlds, and the great machinery of the Galactic Confederation operated smoothly. None of them knew what was coming. The wave will strike in 93 days, the voices told Emma during her final preparation session. When it does, remember that you are not just saving human worlds. Every species, every civilization, every living being in the galaxy will depend on human action for survival. Emma felt the weight of responsibility pressing down on her like a mountain. She was just one person with a small group of believers, facing a disaster that would affect trillions of lives. But the voices filled her with strength and purpose. "You are ready," they whispered. "Trust in human courage, human compassion, and human determination. The galaxy will survive because humans know how to hope when all seems lost." The dark energy wave hit the galaxy exactly when the sacred voices had predicted it would. Emma was sitting in her meditation chair on the lonely station when she felt it coming. The voices in her mind became urgent and frightened. "It begins now," they whispered. "Hold strong. Remember everything we taught you." At first, nothing seemed to change. Emma looked out her window and saw the same stars she always saw. But then her communication screen started flashing red warning lights. Messages from across the galaxy began cutting off in the middle of sentences. Within 6 hours, every long-distance communication system in the galaxy went silent. The quantum networks that carried messages between star systems simply stopped working. Ships traveling faster than light suddenly dropped out of their high-speed journeys, stranded between worlds. Emma watched her screens as the reports came in. Trade routes that had operated for thousands of years disappeared overnight. Colony worlds lost contact with their home planets. The central government of the Galactic Confederation could no longer talk to any of its member worlds. Panic spread like fire through space. On every inhabited world, aliens who had grown used to easy communication and travel suddenly found themselves completely alone. Food shipments stopped arriving. Rescue ships could not reach planets in trouble. The careful balance that held galactic civilization together simply collapsed. But Emma and her human friends were ready. Captain James Mitchell had positioned his cargo ships at key locations throughout the galaxy. When the faster-than-light travel stopped working, James's ships were already loaded with emergency supplies and ready to travel the old way slowly but surely through normal space. The sacred voices guided James through the twisted space that the dark energy had created. They showed him safe paths between stars, warned him about dangerous areas where space itself had become unstable, and told him which worlds needed help the most urgently. Dr. Rebecca Foster had spent months preparing human colonies and nearby alien settlements for isolation. When the Great Silence began, her people had stored food, water, and medical supplies. They had backup power systems that did not depend on connections to other worlds. Most importantly, they had hope. Commander David Turner used his defense ships to maintain order and provide help wherever it was needed. His human crews worked alongside alien populations, sharing resources and protecting everyone from the chaos that followed the communication breakdown. The sacred voices spoke constantly to Emma and the other humans who could hear them. They provided detailed information about which worlds were facing the worst problems. They gave navigation instructions for ships traveling through the dangerous twisted space. They even suggested solutions to technical problems that the smartest alien scientists could not solve. 3 weeks after the Great Silence began, Emma received an emergency call on one of the few short-range communication systems that still worked. The signal was weak and full of static, but she could hear panic in the voice. "This is Research Station Alpha 7, the voice said. "We are losing life support. Our power systems are failing. If anyone can hear this, we need help immediately." Emma recognized the voice. It was High Researcher Catherine Vale, the woman who had dismissed Emma's warnings and sent her away from Harmony Point. Catherine's station was stranded in deep space with no way to call for rescue using the normal communication networks. Emma quickly contacted Captain James. "I know where they are," she told him. "The voices are showing me the exact location." James's ship was 3 days' travel away using the slow but safe routes the voices had taught them. As his ship approached the failing research station, James could see why Catherine had sent the emergency call. The station's lights were flickering and pieces of metal were floating away from damaged sections. When James's crew brought Catherine and her research team aboard their rescue ship, Catherine stared at Emma through the communication screen with amazement and confusion. "How did you know where to find us?" Catherine asked. "How did you know we were in trouble?" Emma smiled gently. "The same way we've known everything else, Dr. Vale. We listened to the voices that the galaxy forgot how to hear." Catherine's scientific mind struggled with what she was seeing. Human ships were moving safely through space that had become impossible for other races to navigate. Human crews were finding stranded stations and planets with perfect accuracy. Humans seemed to know about problems before anyone reported them. Over the following months, as Emma coordinated the massive human relief effort from her remote station, aliens across the galaxy began to understand something that shocked them. The species they had once considered primitive newcomers had become their only hope for survival. Human ships became the lifelines connecting isolated worlds. Human crews delivered food to starving planets, medicine to colonies fighting disease, and hope to civilizations that thought they had been abandoned forever. The voices guided every mission. They helped human navigators find safe paths through the twisted space. They warned rescue teams about hidden dangers. They provided technical knowledge that solved problems no one else could fix. Emma often worked 20 hours a day, coordinating rescue missions and relief efforts. She had maps covered with red marks showing worlds in crisis, and green marks showing successful human interventions. Every day, more red marks turned green as human ships reached another stranded world. "We are not trying to control anyone," Emma explained to the alien leaders who asked why humans were helping so much. "We are trying to hold the galaxy together until the connections can be rebuilt. The voices teach us that all life is precious, and no world should face this darkness alone." As the Great Silence continued, something remarkable happened. Aliens who had once looked down on humans as primitive began asking them for guidance. The species that had ruled the galaxy for thousands of years now depended on humanity's unique gift for hearing the wisdom of the ancients. 18 months after the Great Silence began, Emma woke up one morning to something she had not heard in a very long time. Her communication screens were beeping with incoming messages. The dark energy wave had finally passed, and the galaxy's communication networks were slowly coming back to life. Emma sat in her meditation chair and listened to the sacred voices. They sounded different now, calmer and more peaceful than they had during the crisis months. "The test is complete," they whispered to her. "The galaxy has learned what it needed to learn. Now comes the time for building something better than what came before." Messages flooded in from across the galaxy. Alien leaders who had once ignored or dismissed Emma now sent grateful thanks. Worlds that had been saved by human rescue missions wanted to honor the people who had kept them alive. Even High Researcher Catherine Vale sent a personal message asking Emma to return to Harmony Point. When Emma arrived at the rebuilt space station, she could hardly believe how much had changed. The meeting halls that had once been filled only with alien representatives now included humans in positions of respect and authority. Captain James Mitchell was there, now recognized as the coordinator of Galactic Emergency Response. Dr. Rebecca Foster had been appointed to lead the new Department of Planetary Self-Sufficiency. Commander David Turner oversaw the combined defense forces that now included mixed crews of humans and aliens working together. The biggest change was in how everyone looked at Emma. When she walked into the Great Assembly Hall, representatives from over 300 species stood up to honor her. These were creatures who had once considered humans to be primitive newcomers, but now they saw Emma as the person who had guided them through their darkest time. Catherine Vale approached Emma before the formal meeting began. The older woman looked tired but also amazed by everything that had happened. "I owe you an apology," Catherine said quietly. "I was wrong to dismiss your research. What you discovered changed everything we thought we knew about consciousness and cosmic connection." Emma smiled warmly. "You don't need to apologize, Dr. Vale. The voices taught me that doubt and questioning are important parts of learning. Your scientific training helped us document everything properly once people started believing." The formal assembly was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen before. Instead of the cold, logical discussions that had always marked galactic politics, the meeting felt warm and spiritual. Representatives spoke about the importance of wisdom alongside knowledge, and the need for interconnection as well as technological advancement. Emma stood before the huge gathering and spoke about what the sacred voices had taught humanity during the crisis. "The ancients showed us that the Great Silence was not just a disaster to survive," Emma explained. "It was a necessary test. The galaxy had become too dependent on easy communication and fast travel. We had forgotten how to be strong on our own, how to help our neighbors, and how to listen to the deeper truths that connect all living things. An elderly representative from one of the oldest alien civilizations raised his hand. But why could only humans hear these ancient voices? What makes your species special? Emma thought carefully before answering. The voices told us that every species once had the ability to hear them. But as civilizations became more focused on technology and logic, they evolved away from spiritual awareness. Humans kept this ability because we are young and still value things like intuition, creativity, and faith alongside our scientific knowledge. Catherine Vale stood up to address the assembly. We have learned that intelligence without wisdom leads to fragility. Technology without spiritual grounding creates civilizations that cannot survive real challenges. The human approach to consciousness has opened entirely new fields of study for all of us. Emma announced the creation of the Academy of Sacred Listening, a new institution built on Harmony Point where humans would teach other species how to develop their spiritual awareness. While most aliens could not hear the ancient voices as clearly as humans did, many were beginning to sense faint echoes when they practiced the meditation techniques Emma's people taught them. The changes went far beyond just spiritual learning. Captain James now led a permanent fleet of ships that maintained regular contact between distant worlds, ensuring that no planet would ever again face isolation during a crisis. Dr. Rebecca's new department helped every world develop the ability to survive on its own resources while still participating in galactic trade and cooperation. Commander David established training centers where mixed crews of humans and aliens learned both practical skills and spiritual disciplines. These new teams could handle any kind of emergency, from technical disasters to social conflicts. As Emma concluded her speech to the Great Assembly, the sacred voices whispered their approval in her mind. Humanity had completed the task the ancients had prepared them for, not to rule the galaxy or prove they were superior to other species, but to serve as bridges between the physical world of technology and the spiritual realm of wisdom. The final ceremony took place in the Academy's new meditation hall. Young humans and aliens sat together in circles, learning from each other and creating something entirely new. Their different ways of thinking and perceiving the world combined to form a harmony that seemed to resonate through space itself. Emma watched from the observation deck as these mixed groups practiced their lessons. She could feel the sacred voices growing stronger as more beings learned to listen. A new kind of galactic consciousness was emerging, one that honored both the practical knowledge needed for civilization and the spiritual wisdom needed for true understanding. The galaxy would never again make the mistake of forgetting that technology without wisdom leads only to fragility. And humanity had found its true purpose among the stars, not as conquerors, but as teachers helping all life remember how to hear the voices that connected everything in the universe.